The Jews did not reject Jesus. This is a phrase that keeps being floated out there, said emphatically, and it is untrue. It's unbiblical. It really comes from this place of the Jews killed Jesus. And yes, a few Jews did, and we need to look at why they did, which people also don't seem to understand. Let's look at both parts because it needs clarification, and we need to stop the false teaching that the Jews rejected Jesus. It's like saying all Gentiles accepted Jesus, and that was absolutely untrue. Many Gentiles worshiped pagan gods at the time. Many had different beliefs other than, we have to go look at the whole globe of Gentiles. But definitely this belief that somehow Christians replaced the Jews because they believed in Jesus when not all Gentiles did. And also the majority of Jews were believing and following Rabbi Yeshua. Okay, so let's check it out. So we go to the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Yeshua is feeding the 5,000 Jewish men. Now, Yeshua starts his rabbinical teaching publicly at 30, which was a very young age to do that, by the way. 30 was the youngest you could do. You really weren't seen as able to do that on your own, that kind of stature. It was very few rabbis who started at 30. But Rabbi Yeshua was seen as a luminary. He was recognized at 12 as being very unique and special and astounding the rabbis in the temple. His family had taken him to the temple for Passover, and then they left with the caravan of family and friends and realized he wasn't with them, turned around, took 3 days to figure out where he was. Finally, they found him in the temple, talking with the rabbis, asking them questions, listening, and they were astounded by his wisdom, his insight, his clarity, his perception. The Bible also says that Yeshua grew in favor of God and man. And that's really important. And that is why I believe that Yeshua just didn't come down in a fully human form, like an adult form, that it was it was also fulfilling prophecy that he was born to a virgin, but it also was to have family, friends, the synagogue, the temple, watch him, see him. We know that in John 8, he is referred to as sinless when he says to the men holding the stones who want to stone to death the woman caught in adultery. He said, whoever has not sinned, throw the first stone. And they couldn't, because they had all sinned, but Yeshua had not. And that's why he says to her that he refused to condemn her, because he was the only one that could stone her, being sinless. So here we have Rabbi Yeshua studying at 12 to impress the rabbis in the temple, but he had started studying when he was about 4 or 5. And he was studying the oral Torah, putting so much to memory. It was a culture of memorization. We just aren't familiar with that. I mean, when I was younger, I memorized phone numbers. But today I don't even memorize phone numbers because of the cell phones. We don't have a society of memorization like they did then. And they committed huge amounts to memory: the oral Torah, the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Talmud you actually started studying that at 15. So at 12, Rabbi Yeshua would have been studying the oral Torah and the Mishnah and some of the rabbinical interpretations, but he was still extremely wise and people were recognizing him. He was like a rabbi prodigy in the making. So then he is early being able to go and publicly do his teaching. And he is also one of the rabbis that is not going to teach just by the letter of the law and legally and not veer off. He was one that they refer to as teaching with authority. And that is because he was able to interpret the Torah. Now, not all of them could, and I don't think a lot of the rabbis would have given the green light to just anybody to interpret the Torah either. But that is why Yeshua could heal on the Sabbath, because he was interpreting the law, he was looking at it differently, and he was sharing why he was doing that. Also, when he did not choose to stone the woman caught in adultery, that was another interpretation, and he was going deeper with that. He was basically saying there's physical adultery, but then there's also the adultery when you look at someone and lust after them in your heart, in your mind, and you're basically committing adultery with them in your interior. It's not physical, but that's still, according to Rabbi Yeshua, in his interpretation of the Torah, that is still sin. So you had two very different styles of rabbinical teaching. And Yeshua was the one that was given the authority to teach with interpretation. So when you hear in the biblical text him being referred to as one with authority, that was because he was one of the few that they acknowledged had the ability to teach in an interpretive way of the Torah. Now, a generation before Rabbi Yeshua was Rabbi Hillel. And Rabbi Hillel really, he was the one that coined the golden rule. So basically he was saying, anything that's hateful to you, don't do to another. And Yeshua was the same, but Yeshua again was going even further. Love your enemies. Both Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Yeshua had loving others as the epicenter of their teachings. So Yeshua is going to feed 5,000 Jewish people, which actually translated into, scholars say, reality was, because the women and children were there too, but not counted, you had 12 to 20,000 people that Yeshua was feeding. Now, that's a lot of people who are listening to him, following him, loving him, and regarding him in high honor as Rabbi Yeshua. And so he calls to anyone who might have some food. A little child does. The boy has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So Yeshua miraculously multiplies this small little meal, and it ends up feeding 12 to 20,000 people that day. And not even that, but he asks his rabbinical students, which we would say are the 12 disciples, to hand these baskets out to the people. And as they were, it kept multiplying. And after everyone was satiated and well fed, there was 12 baskets of food left over. And numbers are very important in the Hebrew Bible and in the New Testament. And so 12 is a divine number. It's a number of fulfillment. We can also think of the 12 rabbinical students or the disciples. We can think of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so we see this abundance that Yeshua is giving. He's not stingy. He's providing, and it reminds us of God and the heavenly manna falling from heaven every morning for the Israelites, which would have been 1 to 2 million out there in the desert, going from the slavery of Pharaoh in Egypt to freedom. But it took in the promised land, but it took 40 years, and every day faithfully God would send the divine miraculous manna to the Israelites to eat in the morning. So Yeshua, then next we hear him, the next time he's feeding large amounts of people, is 4,000. And that's on the other side of the Sea of Galilee where Gentiles are. And 4,000 was the combination of both men, women, and children. And again, asking for some food, there is the provision of 7 loaves of bread and a few fish. Again, it's multiplied miraculously. He's been with the Gentiles for 3 days, it is said, and doing miracles and teachings and healings. And again, the miracle of the abundance of this food, feeding them. And then leftover baskets, it says, are 7. And again, very biblical, divine number, a number of fulfillment. And we can also think of the 7 days it took to create the world and the day of rest. So Yeshua has thousands of followers, not just of Jews, but also of Gentiles. And if you want to know what the crowd of 4,000 was like, just go back and look at the beautiful day, the last day on earth, but the first day in heaven for Charlie Kirk. Look at the amount of people that were there at the Utah campus. They said it was like 3,000. And just imagine another 1,000. That's how many Yeshua was feeding and interacting with. Charlie Kirk was 31 that day, but this month he would be 32. And Yeshua taught between the ages of 30 and 33. So look at Charlie, and you can imagine what Yeshua was like with his energy, with his excitement, with his teaching. Just Charlie had this love of the crowds and being outside, and so did Yeshua. And so it's a better way to think about Yeshua, because so often we think of him, it looks like he's, when he's being rendered in art, like he's in his 40s. And he wasn't. He was young with all of this energy and love to give. And it was exciting. People were excited to come and experience this rabbi, this unique, fantastic Rabbi Yeshua with his 12 disciples, his 12 rabbinical students, and the entourage of women. There was women that were also traveling with Yeshua and other people as well. And so it was an amazing time in history. So towards the end of his teaching, when he's 33, prior to his crucifixion, we have another huge miracle. And this is when Martha and Mary, who he knows, and we've heard about them before in the Gospels, their brother Lazarus becomes ill. And so they send a messenger to Rabbi Yeshua. He's in a different city. They're in Bethany, which is about a couple miles from Jerusalem. And they are wanting him to come because they know he can heal their brother. But he doesn't. Yeshua drags his feet. He says to his rabbinical students, God's glory will shine through this experience. So when they finally show up at Martha and Mary's home, they find out that Lazarus has been buried for 4 days in a cave already. The stone's been rolled over the opening, and people are weeping. They're in mourning for Lazarus. Many people have come from Jerusalem. He was definitely an honored and revered, important person. And so they're weeping. And so the shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept in John 11, verse 35. And he's joining them in the mourning. And that's so beautiful that he's weeping with them. He understands their pain. He understands their loss. But then he basically says, take me to his tomb. Now, before this, he asks Mary or Martha, who am I? Because she basically is saying, if you had just been here, you could have healed him. You could have prevented this death. And Yeshua asks her, well, who is it that you think I am? And she goes, you are the Messiah, the Mashiach. You are the Son of God, and you could have done this. So it's established there that people believe in him as more than just a human, that he is divine, he is the Messiah that was to come, and he's bringing people together. The Jews are coming together believing in him. This is very important to hear. So he is taken to the cave where Lazarus was buried. And before Yeshua calls out to Lazarus. He asks the people to remove the stone, and he prays. And I love this because it says he looks up, he's looking up to heaven, and he says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. And after that, he calls out to Lazarus in a loud voice. Lazarus comes out like this walking dead man. He's got the linen wrapped all around him of the embalming linen. He's got a separate covering on his face, which is what they did in those times, especially the Hebrew burial process. Separate linen for the body than for the face. And this made more people believe in Yeshua, follow Yeshua. And so the crowds just kept growing every time he would go out. Now, the people that were there went back to Jerusalem, were rejoicing and telling people what they saw. But then there was also some that went and informed the temple. The Pharisees hear this. They're telling the Sadducees they need a meeting of the Sanhedrin that includes the chief priest Caiaphas. They're very concerned. Why are they concerned? It is because they believe if Jesus keeps going like this, all, not a few, not many, all Jews will believe in him and will want to crown him King of the Jews. That's what it says in John 11. It's very important to hear this. So what were they going to do? The problem is the peace between the Jews and the Roman Empire was so important. They wanted to keep their second temple. They wanted to worship there, and Rome was allowing them to do that despite Rome's paganism and all the many gods. They were allowing the Jews at this time to have their second temple, which was glorious. King Herod had expanded it, and it was amazing. And then they had their land. They were in their land. They had their second temple, and they wanted to keep it. If Rabbi Yeshua, doing miracles, being this divine human, that they were going to eventually want and demand him to be king of the Jews, this would create the Roman Empire to change their focus. And they truly believed that this would then create the Roman Empire to come and attack them, to destroy their second temple, and to drive them out, another diaspora from their land. This was their concern. It was because of the popularity, the belief in Yeshua. And so Chief Caiaphas, the chief priest Caiaphas, says, the one will be sacrificed basically for the many. The one will be sacrificed for the temple to stay, for the land to stay, that we can stay in our land, stay in our temple. We'll crucify this Rabbi Yeshua, and that we will not have any conflict with Rome. That was their concern. It wasn't because they weren't embracing Yeshua. It's because they feared all the Jews would be embracing Yeshua, and they would want to make him king of the Jews. And that would incur the wrath of Roman Empire, who believed in many gods. And of course, Yeshua gaining in more and more popularity would also be condemning the pagan gods of Rome. They could foresee this. So this is incredible. If we read the Bible and not just listen to the Jews killed Jesus, the Jews rejected Jesus, as if everyone was doing it. No, it was a few, and it was for a specific reason. God loves you. I love you. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.